Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating 5 bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. DUANE the Great Writer and Seer.
I have shared on previous real side experiences that, coupled with the primary objective, that of presenting the real references pertaining to the true reality, and sharing the new you sound connection to the all-is, there is an ongoing effort to reorder or restructure the very idea foundation of the entire creational simulator. For it is the overall consciousness that dictates the overall state of the simulator and its multi-dimensional layout, and that every being operating within this simulator is a part of the overall consciousness that affects it. For to operate within a simulator, so must one upload, so to speak, the ideas that are its template, just as we might elect to indulge in a particular computer game, and where all participants must have uploaded to their computers the same data that generates the game on their computers. That as beings are amalgamated through the same data ideas they share, interconnected through the same ideas they hold to, that is the simulator then experienced, every individual creation, every idea generated or agreed to as created by others, will input into the overall consciousness, the overall program that is the simulator, and have a bearing on the state the simulator currently is in. For as the secondary self comes to the fore, as the free will wielding, idea generating is favoured over simply being as the nowness of the real awareness that is animating through everything creational, invariably that which is created, the choices and decisions made, will lean toward the destructive, that which doesn't make sense or is supportive of life. The assumption of the secondary personal self-position as it is embraced is one of progressive unconsciousness, for as lifetimes go by, generally there is a greater self-imposed limitation and focus within the denser aspects and dimensions of the created self, the physical, astral, etc., and as a time, so-called, passes by, the general, nonsensical, destructive, orientated pursuits and thrill-seeking indulgences, coupled with the increasing unconsciousness, will bring the simulator through its degradation cycles. For as the simulator is the consciousness effected, as I said, so the state of the simulator will be in reflected accordance with the degree and extent of idea restriction and unconsciousness that the overall consciousness comprises of. Additionally, as the personal self is embraced, as the consciousness is fully immersed into, this is a full locked-in agreement with its idea construct. Every idea ever created or agreed with that affected every situation and lifetime since we first entered the simulators is clung to, as opposed to standing in objective real awareness indifference to the consciousness of ideas, as was the case prior to the formulation of the secondary personal self. A necessary process, the establishing of the secondary personal self, that affords then a comparison by which the isness everything can be recognized, but a process whereas every idea of a consciousness now is held to, as the personal self is embraced for the many lifetimes that it is. This is the equivalent of having every web page we ever have visited present on the computer screen, which naturally will have a somewhat of an overburdening impact on the computer. The same principle holds sway with the simulator, that through the sheer bulk of consciousness ideas clung to, this in addition to the ideas being of a distorted, destructive nature, and that unconsciousness becomes ever more so, the reflected effect is the simulator deteriorating to eventual implosion. An effort then, as I said, is a restructuring of the overall consciousness, that this simulator implosion can be delayed or even potentially offset. As everything experienced is according to decision on an individual and indeed collective overall consciousness basis, such an intervention can only be so, and indeed to whatever extent, if agreement is extended that allows such a consciousness overhaul to be exacted, and our efforts in regards to this will then be limited to the parameters as set through overall consciousness, and I have been sharing over recent months the various particulars in regards to this, but ultimately the overall consciousness, the agreements prevalent as its construct, is the decisive factor. In this real side experience, it was as though a group and myself were storing what impressions revealed were vast streams of data in a particular area of a multi-dimensional creation. I say impressions, as visually what was transpiring would be somewhat difficult to discern, absent of the real awarenesses, personal self-afforded evaluation as to what was occurring. For the simulation of our activity comprised of the managing of what appeared to be streams of data like coding and geometry. The nature of the creational simulators shares similar principles as the computer gaming technologies, in that, as I mentioned earlier, it is the ideas of consciousness that are the generators of the simulator's multi-dimensional layout, much as computer data generates the games we play. At the base level then, the overall consciousness idea template is generally expressed on the real side, much like data or indeed geometry, and as we may find ourselves tasked with restructuring the overall consciousness, so this visually may present as our reordering computer-like data or reformatting geometry. In this case, however, it was as though the group and I were securing certain of the idea data, that is the overall consciousness, an effort to keep it beyond the reach of the dark force simulator controllers, the ill-intended and unaware, who preferably would like the simulator to remain as it is, under their dominion. For our consciousness restructuring is for the purposes of not only offsetting the simulator deterioration, but to afford more awareness conducive creational circumstances for all, which of course wouldn't include the oppression and subjugation as maintained by the dark forces for the extensive durations of time it has been up until this point. Impressions suggested we had reformatted certain of the overall consciousness to that which would effect as more beneficial circumstances, but had to as though store it safely and ensure the dark forces were unable to acquire it. Whereas impressions further revealed, should they manage to secure it, they could in some way reset it or destroy our efforts where this particular portion of overall consciousness ideas were concerned. It seemed we had determined the safest location up until this point, a realm that was completely shrouded in darkness, and all that was visible was the consciousness idea data and geometry present. Impressions revealed, however, that despite what was by our estimation a secure location, the dark forces had determined as to our whereabouts and the consciousness of ideas we were protecting. I have shared on previous real-side experiences that I have my own version of the TARDIS, the time-travelling ship that Doctor Who utilises in the television series by the same name, generally as a means of a point-to-point real-side dimensional traversing that, although unnecessary, as the real awareness can simply insert its simulated forms anywhere throughout creation, no transportation mechanism or means required, such exaggerated features are for the purposes of real-side experience retention on waking. And now, as the dark forces were closing in on our dark realm position, I would manifest my TARDIS, and as though be transferring the idea data we had been securing in this creational position to the TARDIS's computer banks. I would proceed to then transport the particular portion of overall consciousness ideas in my TARDIS to an altogether different other dimensional position, denying the dark forces from laying their interfering hands upon it and undoing all our good work. As I said, in regards to this particular project, part of what was the overall consciousness restructuring endeavour, it was imperative that this portion of the consciousness we had reformulated was protected, as though it were somewhat vulnerable for a certain duration. But ultimately, if we prevented the dark forces from finding it long enough, continued protection of it would no longer be necessary, as impressions revealed. In a scene that followed, I would find myself in the company of a large number of what appeared to be humans, traversing through a series of underground caverns and tunnels to reach a certain point. My purpose for being present was seemingly for the benefit of one particular human that was featuring. If this was a situation that literally was as it appeared to be, or was perhaps more symbolic, essential was it for these humans to reach whatever point within the cave systems they were intending. A rather claustrophobic-inducing series of underground caverns, to be sure, as there was barely enough room to allow the humans to operate, as they squeezed through and onwards through the obstruction that the rocks littering the tunnels presented as. Although the group of humans were not impeded, just that their progress was more laborious, but the one human I was seemingly there to assist appeared to be more limited than all others featuring, for unlike all the others he was unable to breathe, but by virtue of my presence was I able to assist him, as though my proximity in relation to his body form was enough to facilitate his breathing, that he too could proceed with the overall group and reach the destination that was so seemingly very essential. Oftentimes certain individuals will be identified as those that essential is it for their creational body form survival. Generally they are either stepping up and are set to be instrumental key assets in regards to certain of the life and beneficial awareness projects. As the deciders, they must extend agreements that afford the ability of others to assist and intervene into their affairs, and assuming we have the agreements where we can operate in assisting capacities, so we can step into the roles thus afforded by them and ensure their safety, protection, to rescue them as necessary, as I have experienced and shared innumerable examples where I and groups have been deployed for these very objectives. This would be another example, a brief scene, but I was charged with ensuring this particular human's safe passage, that be it purely representational, that perhaps he was navigating through a creation as symbolized by the rocky underground environment, that he was unable to breathe, maybe representing an inability where his creational progress was concerned, and where he required support, or that it was literally as it appeared to be, that he was traversing through what was a dimensional position, but where he was physiologically inadequate for the task. Either way, I was assigned to ensure his success, and would do so. As impressions suggested, important was it that this human be provided assistance. He was identified as another key essential individual, though details regarding the specifics were lacking.